Welcome to the second season of the Deployment Dojo. This is episode 9 of our live show where we introduce and discuss software installation topics to make you a better set of ninja. I'm your host, Rob Menching, and joining me once again is my very good friend and still first student of the dojo, David Edson. David, how you doing, my man?
Pretty good.
All right. So I know you're on the clock. We got to get done in a half hour. So I want you guys here watching this episode, if you're watching it later and things like that, let me know if you like a half hour time frame better than an hour time frame. I always feel like I'm trying to pack a whole lot into this monthly episode, but maybe half hour would work better. So as you guys think about it, take this episode in, think about, hey, maybe half hour chunks would be better. David, should we get going?
Yep.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
We did a whole bunch of cool stuff last episode that finally put together and used all of our skills that we had been building up to build something. I'm going to call it useful. I mean, it's interesting at least. I don't know how 100% useful it is in the real world, but the idea of being able in our MSBuild project to list items and then have them stored in a text file that tells us, hey, when the last time they were updated as an audit. That's what we built. Does that sound familiar, David? Yep. All right, cool. Hopefully it sounds good to you. Bert's here, Eugene's here. Hopefully a bunch of other people are hanging out in the chat. If you're here, go ahead and say hi. If you're here watching it later, go ahead and leave a comment. It's great to see. Remember, this 30-minute episode works for you. All right, David. So what we're going to do today, I had 2 things planned, but we're now only going to do one given make sure we hit your time frame here. All right. We are going to clean up all of the work we did to prepare our audit project for reusability. But where we left it, we have like some stuff scattered about, and one important piece that I want to introduce to reuse, actually a concept we talked about before that we're not using in the audit project, in the audit targets now. I want to talk about that, and that's how we'll wrap up today. Sounds good?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, here we go. All right, so this is our code that we left it before. I'm going to bump it up 1, 2, well, just 1. I think 1 we'll have to do. All right. I really want to bump it up 1 more. Do I? That's probably big enough. Okay. So here is where we left off in our audit targets. There's a bit of pieces, so we'll kind of take this apart real quick as a refresher, and then we'll jump right into the thing that we need to fix. Looking at the project that we use it, this is how you use it. You create an audit item, and we want that list of audit items, whatever they are, to be written to our audit file here that says, hey, here's the file, here's the project it came from, and here's its modified time. So that was the whole thing that we did. And we did so by defining a output file as a variable that you can then customize, which is why we have this output file equals blank. If the user didn't customize it, we'll call it default.audit. They could call it whatever they want. We have our all-important target, the auditing target, that has set up its inputs appropriately, the items that we're going to bring in, that we're going to use to check their timestamps to see if they're newer than the output, which is our audit file, which can be a variable as we saw above. Notice we're using an underscore audits. That means that it's, I guess, as convention, it's an internal collection that we created by using this calculate audit inputs. And we calculate those audit inputs so that we can skip our output file. Remember, before we were getting our output file into the collection of files that were being audited, and we didn't want that. So we exclude it by creating a whole new item here called underbar audit, which the underbar meaning, the underscore meaning, this is kind of like ours, don't use it. This is our stuff. And that way we don't modify the user's original audit collection here. All right, cool. So we get our internal audit collection, and we can then compare our collection of files that are inputs against our output. If something has happened, we print out a message, and then we do the whole write lines to file with the variable that we use for the audit file. And then we do this transform that we talked about, different ways of escaping, both with the quote and then the percent hexadecimal in here and from the last episode. And then this nice little bit of line noise, as it is, that use standard item metadata on each item to the full path. And of course, we overwrite the file every time because as we saw, if we didn't, we just get our audit file would keep growing and growing and growing, which might be an interesting feature for some audit files, but that's not the goal of this one. It is to capture everything that we did in one single build. All right, how's that for a summary in like 3 minutes?
That's a good summary.
All right, so hopefully with that in place, I want to jump into the change that I want to talk about. And it's all around the audit output file. All right, so this is what we're doing. If we look at our Dojo proj, we had the ability to define our own. I am not pushing our keys here. Control KU. There we go. We could override the output file by setting a property group here, or by setting the audit output file. Hard for me to say. The audit output file to whatever you want here. And because we import our targets later, then that would prevent this from being set because the audit output would no longer read blank. And this is a fine way to do things. However, it means that you need to make sure that you don't do, well, let's do a build because we haven't done a build. Let's do that. Let's remove the default.audit file so we're clean there. And then let's do a MSBuild. We don't need a build file. We'll just do a clear MSBuild. Oh. MSB is a shortcut that I have on my computer. That might be one too big. All right, too big. There we go. So you can see we calculate our audit file. We have audit.txt because that is the file that we overrode here, and we get our file all good, right?
Right.
Oh, shoot. I didn't just do that, did I? I just deleted the targets file. Oh my goodness. And I don't have a backup right now. What did I just do? Wow. I was going to delete the audit.txt, not the audit.targets file. Oh no. All right. Wow. What day is it? Oh, okay.
It's the new year.
Yeah. Welcome to 2026, everybody. Okay. Wow. Okay. We're going to do this fast. I'm going to get it back at least close because we did this before. Works. And we're right back where we were however many minutes ago before I deleted this file to start with. Cool.
Cool.
All right. There. Now we've doubly reviewed the content in here. Let's move on. What I was trying to say was that if you have this condition up here and it's blank, then you can get into interesting situations where, like, let's move this around. Oh, this will probably still work. Right? We can move this down here. Now, what's this going to do? It's going to get my collection of audits. It's going to do my import. My import is going to set to default, right? Then we're going to continue here in the project file, and it's going to overwrite it audit.txt, and everything's going to work out okay, right? In the end, we still can overwrite it, even if we put our property of audit output at the bottom, right?
Right.
Makes sense? All right. So the tricky part, though, is if I want to be able to use this the default audit output file in my in items or properties that I'm defining here in my project. Okay, so let's say I wanted to have a property here, and it's not going to make necessarily a lot of sense for this particular property being able to reuse it, right? But this is the original audit output file, right? So if I wanted to know, or let's go this way, the default output file, audit output file. He's starting to paste in the text from before. Yeah, cool. I got really close looking at what Eugene is giving us. All right, cool. So let's say I wanted to, for some reason, know the in my project here in the dojo.proj, what the default audit output file was, right? And then also then change it, okay? Or how about we want to use the original audit output file, but then put a .foo on the end of it, right? In any case, the idea being that we want to be able to use the default value of output audit file within our project, right?
Okay.
Just to know, like, hey, what was it? Right now it's in the targets, which means I have to put these properties down here for it to work. Does that make sense? Let me run it. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll come to our audit targets and we will say audit output file. And remember, this is a property, not an item, so I need to change this to a $. And we're going to take that comment out. Okay. So now I'm going to show I'll show the output file and the output every time we run this successfully. All right. Cool. Oh yeah. You see what happened? Audit output file equals .foo. Audit output file equals .foo. I was trying to have it be the default value, right? I wanted this. I was trying to get this, whatever the default was, plus the .foo on it.
Right.
But I couldn't. Well, I didn't because I set it to .foo, and then when the import ran, it said, "Oh, well, this is already set, so I'm not going to set the default," and it doesn't work. And you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, that means I have to define this property after this import." Okay, I can do that. I can bring it all the way down here, right? And then when I do a run, and I will delete this .foo file now. Now it worked. See?
Yep.
Because it now had the output file. But it requires me to put my property down here. And it could be that forces strange structure inside my project that I don't like, right? Or that I don't want. And as a consumer of the audit project, I'd like not to have to worry about knowing that, right? Like getting deep into it. And we talked about this pattern before, but it is very common for custom target systems, like what we're building with this audit targets, right? We're creating this reusable target extension system to MSBuild, is to create a targets file and a props file. Do you remember the props file we talked about? So it's been a while. Yeah. So it is common that you get a pair of files that go together. You get a targets file and a props file. And these names, again, are convention because in the end, they're all just MSBuild projects. But what you put in your props file is usually it's called props, usually because it has properties or it has the pieces of your system, your reusable system that you want to share or that you want to make available within the project. Okay.
Okay.
Now import. So now I have my targets, and in here, then at the top, it's common to then do the project import the props file. All right. So you import the props at the top, you import the targets at the bottom, and you get this nice space in between where you put all of your project stuff. All right. So the props now doesn't need this condition. It can set the default audit. And because it then gets imported by this project, I can just overwrite it if I want. Like if I just want to go and do xyz.audit. All right. I've imported the props at the top, and then I've overriding that property, and then I'm importing my targets, which down at the bottom now don't have to have that property in them. Okay?
Okay.
And boom, I still have xyz.audit. Okay? So this pattern is very, very common when you're building reusable systems in MSBuild. And it allows me now to not just override the file, but now I can also use the default value, either by storing this property or here, And now let me get rid of xyz.audit and default audit.foo, which I both got working this time. And then we do a build. Now look, we got default audit.foo. Okay. So this ends up being a nice way of organizing your system. So when you're creating, if you're thinking about creating a MSBuild, an add-in, an extension to the MSBuild build system, think about your targets file, because that's where, honestly, where most of the work is, right? Obviously, this is where we spent all of our time, both in last episode and this episode, rewriting it. That where you're going to think most of the work, and then anything that you want to be overridable or available to the project system, you put in the props file here. All right. Now I took this condition out. It's also fairly common when you have a props file to have a, we call it, you have it like a guard. Whoop, I don't need this condition. You have a guard, audit props imported, and then you set this to true. And what this does is you have this flag, and so that if someone forgets to, for example, if I forgot to include my audit.props, well, my audit output file wouldn't be set. We'd be back in that bad state. Right, David?
Right.
So what you can do then is you add the import here, import project equals audit.props, and you put a condition on it that says audit props imported does not equal true. Man, I'm having a hard time typing here today. All right, clearly. Okay, so now if I don't import my audit props, then the audit targets will do an import because nothing defined this audit props imported Boolean, right?
Okay, yep.
Boom. So, hey, we get default.audit. But, and if we then bring in our props, then, and we run, oh, I broke something. What did I break? Move, recycle. Import that, audit output, set that. Oh, I just had the file existing. I had the .foo file existing already. All right, that's why. Then it still works, and now we can override because they set their import. Whether they choose to do this, right, then the audit targets will bring its own audit in. All right, we'll delete that. It's now back to default.audit, and everything's working. Or they remember to add the import. They choose to add the import.props at the top. All right, so this is going to give us the same thing. Right, and default.audit is still there. And what happens if we don't have this condition? That condition protects us from getting this warning here that I hope will show up. You'll get this warning if you don't have that. Hey, MSBuild will say audit.props cannot be imported again. It was already imported in dojo.proj. This is likely an MSBuild authoring error. The subsequent import will be ignored. MSBuild will only import the project once by putting it here and then importing it audit targets. We're getting a collision. MSBuild is telling you, us, as the developers of this build system, that we did a no-no and we should probably fix it, which is why we put this condition on here with this guard on it.
Oh, okay.
And that then, by doing so, delete, do a build, boom, we get our output file, everything is all set. Cool?
Cool. Makes sense.
All right. So when you're building custom extensions to your build system, extension is not the right word. That's not the word I want. When you're running custom targets and you're extending your build system to do something beyond what it does normally, like having this audit file, think about writing it in audit.targets, audit.props, and so that the consumer can then bring the props at the top, the targets at the bottom. They also can bring, sometimes they can put properties above your imports. It basically gives the consumer of your project more degrees of freedom to manipulate your project if you organize it, these props at the top, these targets at the bottom, and then the project in that. All right. That convention helps a lot. And that's where I'm going to call it. 30 minutes in. And this is fine. When David said he only had this time, it's fine. I knew I could cover this topic within that 30-minute things. The next step we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to package it up so that we can reuse it over and over and over in other projects. So we're going to see how we won't have a Dojo project. We'll probably go create a real C# project and go add audit ability to a real C# project next, and see how we could take our audit and make it reusable so that's very easy to consume within C# projects and all those other things. Essentially turning this into a shareable piece of MSBuild logic to send that you can use with any build system, with any people that need the functionality you provide.
Sounds good.
All right. So that's where we're at. I hope all of you enjoyed this and you got to see me type really fast as I rebuilt the world. We'll be back in 1 month from now, and we'll be showing how to create this reusable and setting ourselves up for the next level of complexity of building these kinds of custom targets to extend your build system. Till then, you guys take it easy. Bye.